Well, Sam, as we're recording this, a lot of stuff going on in our culture right now, and we're
Yeah.
even aside from the current events, I mean, we're in an age right now with the highest rates ever of depression, despair, apathy, discouragement, even suicide, and people cite so many causes for that. I've got my own opinions, but to your message of story, it got me thinking of how much of that would you attribute to people who have really just a negative view of their story in general.
Wow, man. First of all, thank you so much just for having me, Kevin. This is,
Absolutely.
the Ziglar legacy in itself is monumentous and monumental. And I'm just so honored to be able to be here. His legacy lives on, right?
Yes. Yes.
Even beyond his years, and he's inspired so many of us. I
Yes.
think what I would say, man, 100%, Kevin, I do think where you decide to look determines what you see. And I think when we talk about how people view their stories and how they view themselves, even in the midst of this pandemic, and of this unrest that we find ourselves in the world, determines what kind of decisions they will make every single day that lead to anxiety, that lead to depression, that lead. Now, again, I'm not going to get into clinical and all of that,
Yeah.
but aside from that, sometimes we steep into depression, and we know suicide is in many cases a mental battle that we sometimes lose, aside from kind of just the mental challenges and the clinical side to it. But there are so many people that are just deciding to look, if I were to use the word, kind of, the wrong way, or in a way that does not help them progress in life. And I think it takes them where they want to go. Here's what I'd say, Kevin. Here's something big during this pandemic that I've been getting asked from a lot of different secular media stations, and they've been saying, hey, what's your message in the midst of this? I say, well, listen,
Yeah.
we're living right now in what I would call a change, right? It's a pandemic, but it's also a change. We lose people in the changes of life, in the turns of life, so on and so forth. And the greatest thing about change is that it comes with opportunities, and it also comes with challenges.
Yeah.
All change, and if we're not careful, we'll spend so much time focused on the challenges that we miss the actual opportunities that lie in front of us. And I think, to your point, it's all about perspective and what we choose to look at.
Well, looking at our story, and this is a big issue to me, how we look at ourselves. And
Yeah.
my audience knows I've told my story somewhat of reaching a point in my life, and it's always been forward. We're looking forward. This is about coaching. I don't care where you've been. It's where you want to go. How do we get there? And then
Yeah.
I found my own plateau, handicap a little bit, because I wasn't ever looking behind me and didn't realize, why am I repeating
Yeah.
some of these patterns? So
Yeah.
that's part of my own maturity, and something I still have to,
Sure.
I'm growing to pay attention to. But as you talk about this, this story of rewriting it, I mean, we talk about this on the show, but man, it is really difficult. It feels
Yeah.
so counterintuitive to look back, because your story, we believe what we experienced. And,
Yeah.
and yet you're saying it's not to go back and Pollyanna it and to
Right.
pretend that the bad stuff didn't happen, which you don't at all, man. You're so candid with the
Yeah.
bad stuff that happened, and yet saying, how do you take that? Well, just like what you said, to say, okay, this is a challenge. Where can I find the opportunity? And I kind of
Mm.
want you to, with the cap of the person out there right now who may be really hurting. I mean, they have
Yeah.
had a hard way, and they are in a hard way. And to say, man, just rewrite your story, think positive, is falling on deaf ears.
Yeah.
How do you get into that person?
Um, I think what I would say to that is this. My life's mantra has been, for a very long time, it's not about the cards you've been dealt. It's about how you play the hand.
Yeah.
And for me, that's just been, so big. I lost my biological father, who I'd never met, maybe talked to him twice, from COVID-19.
Really? Oh, goodness. Didn't know
Uh,
that. Okay.
yeah, weeks before I lost him, I lost my uncle, I lost my aunt. So we're talking about 3 weeks of consistent death. in my family, not to mention, right? I mean, I'm an entrepreneur, which I'm sure you are in many rights or many respects.
Yeah, yeah.
But and I do a lot of speaking for a living. The speaking industry collapses because live events have gone away. And so I'm staring in the face of all of this trouble and all of this hardship. And in that moment, as I'm preaching my uncle's funeral at the funeral home that they only allowed 10 people in and everybody's wearing masks because of COVID over Zoom, I am just kind of faced with a decision of, which I think many of us were, that there were moments where we thought, okay, next month, COVID's going to be over. Okay, next month, it's going to be over. Okay, next month. And it just seemed like it would never end. The decision I was faced with, that I think many people are faced with even now, as we talk about hardship, is what are we going to do now? What are we going to do? What's the choice? Are we going to decide to live in despair? Or are we going to pat ourselves on the back, look ourselves in the mirror, encourage ourselves, and fight for the other side of the challenge, and really find the opportunity? I hope not to bring too much, not to make this about business too much, but I did a message this past weekend virtually, and one of my messages was this. I think it was something 100,000 plus people have lost their lives to COVID. I lost my family, and businesses have shut down like never before. Millions of small businesses have died in the midst of this. But while all of that was happening, Zoom made $3 billion.
Yeah.
They made $3 billion, and Netflix, tripled almost, in terms of just their market share when we all thought Netflix was over. I said that to say not to be callous or to even discount the hardship. I said that to say that when there's hardship in a change, there's always an opportunity. And while you are going through some hard stuff, there's some great things that can be done and can be seen if you decide to fight on. And so my encouragement to people would be that there is hope. Don't spend all of your life. You got to manage your challenges. You have to manage them. You have to mourn. You have to take your time to talk and process and do all of these things, but you cannot stay there. There comes a life, even, I do a lot of things with in hospitals and in ministry sometimes and other things. There comes a time when I am counseling someone that's lost a loved one 5 years down the road, 20 years, 10 years even after the fact, where I just have to say to them, hey, we lost mom, but you got to get up and live for mom.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Don't just stay in the despair. Also pursue greatness.
Yeah, I want to stick in here to where you're going or where you were talking to. Because we've got people everywhere across the globe. Let's just talk here in America. In our own towns, we've got two friends, and they both have jobs, and one of them, as you say, one of them lost their job. Pure and simple. A lot of people have. They lost their job. They have no income. The other one worked at a medical clinic to some degree, and they're putting in double time and overtime and making more money just to get to brass tacks. And yeah, you're talking about business. That's hard to reconcile, because the one sitting there telling the story of, man, I got bad luck. I got the short end of the stick, and my buddy here, he's raking it in now, man. Good for him. But the story to them, to the average person, feels like it is just a factual story. I lost my job, stinks for me. He's killing it, good for him. And that's it. How do you repaint that story, Sam?
Yeah, it's so great, man. It really is. Again, I don't want to mean to repeat myself. I'm just kind of building on top of the principles. It really is, how you decide to play that hand. I'll give a story. So 2 weeks into COVID, I was kind of stuck because I said, all right, the speaking industry has collapsed. Yeah. The live event industry has collapsed for all intents and purposes. I have friends right now who they haven't made $1 since March. By the grace, right, of God or divine power, whatever you want to call it, they have had savings, right, that they've been able to live on. But I got a call last week, man. I got to pivot, I got to do something. And so I'm faced with the reality of, how am I going to make income again? And 2 weeks in, there was an idea that popped in my head. And there was a moment where I said, I'm not going to stay down. I'm like, staying down has never been an option for me. I guess my biggest thing is, if I'm going to go down, it's not going to be because I didn't try. Yeah. It's not going to be because I didn't reach beyond. And for me, what I started doing is I got my whiteboard out and I said, what are the current opportunities that maybe I don't see right now that I can explore? And so I said, okay, if we just push pause a little bit on the lack and the loss, what is actually available? Well, more people are at home than they've ever been. More people are watching more things than they've ever been. Because more people are at home, they're willing to do things they've never done because they've got more time. Families are closer together because they're together all the time. Marriages, right, are able to spend more time together and be strengthened. What can I do? And so as I started to map this thing out, I said, what if we just start doing digital live events? Yeah. And I started calling people and I got on the phone and people were looking up. They were like, what are you doing? I was like, I just refuse. I can't go down. I got to become innovative. I got to push myself to go beyond maybe what my mind just saw. And I can't stay on yesterday. I can't keep holding on to what was. I have to now, and I got to recognize what was, but I have to recognize what might be in front of me, because I got a family that I got to take care of, and I got to innovate, not just for my mom. I mean, not just for my wife, but for my daughter as well. And we looked up and we were doing events, 250,000 people tuning in and doing partnerships and launching courses and all of these different things, doing marriage events with date nights where people can come in and talking to sponsors. Because here's what I realized, Kevin, is that everybody was trying to figure it out. Yeah. And so as I began to try to figure some things out, I started pulling everybody else and, hey, have you thought of something? Hey, come help me do this. Have you thought, hey, come help me do this? And so I say all that to say, I think the way you rewrite that story is to refuse to accept defeat. You have to refuse to accept defeat. And that's hard because it's an emotional battle. At the core of it, Kevin, it's an emotional battle. But I lost everything. Yeah. I'm like, and we have to spend time there. But emotionally, you have to pull yourself out, or you at least have to, right? I heard a friend say to me, I'm okay with fear riding in the passenger seat, but I'm not going to let it drive.
That's great.
And so it can be there. Put those challenges in the passenger seat with you and take care of them. But you got to get in that driver's seat, and you have to have a sense of fortitude and strength, because you have more in you than you think you do. You have more in you than you. I can guarantee it. And when our back is up against the wall, we figure out what we're made of. You've got more in you than you think. So that's, I don't know if that helps. I don't know if that's crazy.
It does. We're going to stick right here. You know, people oftentimes say, you know, I'm going to be devil's advocate, and I don't ever want to be the devil's advocate. Yeah. So I'm not, but I am going to, as I was reading through your story, you know, points where I don't want anybody to discount the message. And so on that, you know, you have, of course, this, you know, classic story, born with a twin to a drug addicted mother, given up for adoption, mistreated before that in the adoption home. And, you know, a pretty bad start. Not many people can claim a worse start to some degree than that. So they got nothing on you in that regards. Now, what an unbelievable story that you were then adopted by parents, and you now have the literal story. You don't have to make this one up and pretend that you had loving parents. And I thought, okay, somebody's going to hear this who had a really bad start and they did not get saved. And you know those people, you've met with those people, but they're reading that and go, man, that is awesome for you, Sam, that you've got this redemptive story that you were saved. I wasn't. And I grew up in the foster care. I grew up with abusive parents. I grew up, I don't have that story. So again, they're looking back to the facts, and you know, how can they literally, you know, look back as you've worked with people, talked with people, counseled people, prayed with people, can they look back and you know, God can redeem anything, but that stuff happened and it still hurts them today. And when we're
Yeah.
talking about opportunity, man, I get that they may have a perspective, they could derive a strength out of that they can use in a redemptive way. I think it's to the people who are still hurting within that I'm looking for you to say, "Hey, how do you look at that? And go, yeah, that was terrible,
Yeah.
and it's not going to be. Maybe we can't find some perfect redemption, but right now, where are you going to go? Which is the
Yes.
only way to, which is the only answer. But where are you going to go, and how do you again look back at that story and find strength? Maybe that's the question.
100%. Um, we're living in a time, Kevin, that I call the double pandemics, right?
Yeah.
We're living in COVID-19. We're living in the fight for liberation for Black and brown people around the world, right? It's,
Mm-hmm.
we just came through this crazy Black Lives Matter season, right? And we're not talking about the organization. We're not talking about defunding police. We're not talking about any of that. Just the hashtag that went viral. And it was really just the fight for the liberation of Black and brown. And I think what I have to say to that is, to my story, it's, but rescue would be defined as, coming into a middle-class family, middle-class Black family, didn't have everything that we wanted. We had everything that we needed. Parents weren't perfect, but were loving, but yet and still Black. And so I grew up on Auburn Avenue, which was the birthplace of civil rights here in the States, and especially in Atlanta. I grew up across the street from the Martin Luther King Jr. Center, where the above tombs of MLK and Coretta sit above ground. And so I was aware of what you would call Black excellence. At the same time, I still face the same type of oppression that many Black and brown people in America have faced and have had to overcome. And this is why I go back to mentality again and perspective and where you decide to look. Because for me, I had many options in my life to choose to focus on the negative and let the negative be a crutch for me or an excuse for not pushing past the barriers. There are many adopted stories that you hear of adopted families and adopted kids that decide to focus on abandonment. Well, I was abandoned, and their identity becomes, I was an abandoned kid. Doesn't matter how many people love me. Doesn't matter how many people come in. I was abandoned. And so that means that I'm not worth anything. And with the opportunity they've been given, they, in some cases, squander it because they're so focused on, again, the challenge, that they miss the opportunity. And so for me, even being Black in America, I never saw my Blackness as a crutch. I never saw it as a challenge that I could not get over. I never saw it as an excuse to not succeed. One, because I saw so many freedom fighters that, have free, that in the midst of oppression and of darkness, they push through. We talk about Harriet Tubman. You're talking about Langston Hughes. You're talking about Rosa Parks. You're talking about Martin Luther King Jr. And these are people that, in spite of the pressure of the day, they decided that they were going to achieve anyway. And so for me, that's kind of where I'm coming from. There was a moment in my life around 16 where I even squandered the opportunity. I'll just be honest with you, Kevin. I mean, I lived what I would call hood adjacent, meaning I didn't live in the hood, but I was hood adjacent, right? I was right by the hood. So I had friends that were living in that lifestyle of drugs and all that wanted to pull me in. I had other friends that were doing this that pull, and I'll be honest, sometimes I didn't always make the right choice, and found myself almost losing the opportunity that I had, suspended from school for 30 days, all of these other things. And yet again, I was faced with the decision of, where am I going to look and what am I going to focus on? Again, not about the cards you've been dealt, but how you play the hand. I want to give a story of a friend of mine out in Nairobi, Kenya, who grew up in what we call extreme poverty. You don't go any lower than the slums in Nairobi, Kenya, where there is no electricity. There is no, right. You got to go walk to the lake to get the water. I mean, I mean, there's nothing lower. I mean, it's the lowest level of poverty on the earth. He grew up in a hut, and he's got a master's degree, and he's leading one of the largest nonprofits in Nairobi. I sat him down and I said, what happened? He said, I had eight brothers and sisters. We all grew up. He said, and out of all of my 8 brothers and sisters, me and maybe one more of my siblings decided that there was more for us. That there was more for us. And our others, I said, what separated you from he said, we just decided that there was more for us. While my other siblings decided that this was it. And when I reached for more, and you talk about the power of God, right? So I think you bring God into your story, it changes everything. But he reached for more, and he, again, back to that, decided that he would not accept defeat. And he rewrote his story. And so I would say to everyone out there right now that's listening, in the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of what you're going through, obstacles don't have to stop you. You can rise above. And it all is about your mentality. You'd be surprised at how much you could get done by changing your mind. And that's what Ziglar is all about. Am I right? I mean, that's what he's all about. The idea of mental fortitude, right? That your mind kind of, determines your destiny as a man. Think if so, is he change your mind, change your life. So anyway, you get, don't get me started on Zig.
No, hey, it's Ziglar's show, man. We can go there. I just did a show a little bit ago, and we hit on, there's nothing new under the sun, as Solomon wisely said a long time ago, but there are new times and new events. And we are, my gosh, how old am I? 49. How old are you, Sam?
I'm 30.
32. In my lifetime, I've never experienced the state of the culture that we're in right now with, as you said, double pandemics. And man, the focus on the negative, again, feels like an all-time high. And here you are saying, we've got to not do that. We got to come over here. And it's, Zig Ziglar's all about the positive thinking. Man, this is so difficult. You can't go look at the media. You can't go look at news. You can't go look at Facebook if you want to stay positive. I want to take the opportunity. I mean, we're here about story. We're here about your story. We're here about your message on story. And we're going to stay there for the duration of the show, because I just think it's monumental. That's why you're here. But you did just bring in the current, you just brought in the current issue that we have with race. And I'm going to take advantage of you being here on the show, because you are a Black man. And as you said, you grew up, and it's a part of, I spent a lot of time reading the book. You grew up in a very Black culture. I mean, I live up here in Woodland Park, Colorado. They call it Whiteland Park, Colorado, because it's just white. I had a friend up here, and he says, I'm the only Black guy in town, I think. But you are not that. You grew up in that very strong Black culture, and it's such a part of your story. And honestly, Sam, I wanted to take the opportunity for you to give your perspective. And my thought really was, give your perspective. What is the greater story that you would want to communicate to both sides? And forgive me for separating them, because the point is not separating the sides, but we have people out there, and part of their story is they are Black. They were and they are. And so right now they're living in these times. What is the story that you would call them to, the greater story? And then same thing over here to the white folks, the white guys, because I'm with these guys and they're looking at it. And I'll tell you, the issues that I see are questions of responsibility, of guilt, and of confusion. And so I'd love you to speak to both sides, because they're both coming from their stories. My story is I've never known anything but being a white guy. And we come into this, and I realized, now I've got a lot of ignorance. It's not stupidity, but it's just some ignorance.
Wow.
And so trying to figure out what can I do? Where can I take responsibility and privilege, whatever you want to call it? Yeah. All right. I'm just going to I'm going to lob that at you and let you go.
Well, one I want to say, because somebody just asked in the comments, like, where's the book? Okay. It's a greater story. You can get it on Amazon. You can pre-order it. Somebody asked in the comments. There it is. There it is. There it is. Listen, woo, here we go, Kevin. Here we go.
Yeah, please.
One, I'm glad you, and some people may disagree, I'm glad you separated. If we just, for now, go white and Black. Yeah. We're not separate. I know that. And I think we know that. But for the sake of categorizing and understanding, Dr. King, MLK, I've been good friends with his daughter for a long time. He often would say that there's two Americas, white America, black America, right? I mean, he often would say we're living in two Americas. So I'm glad that, for the differentiator, because it helps us understand what we're saying. I did a couple of addresses when all this came out on my Instagram, and one was my message to white and black America. And I said, hey, right now we're going to talk to white and black America only because that tends to be the greatest tension. And at some point, we'll talk to the rest of America and let you come in. Because we need everybody to solve this. But for the sake of solving some problems and addressing, we're going to just categorize because that's where the greatest tension is potentially right now. And my message was to both sides. And to when we talk about this idea of a greater story, to my black and brown brothers and sisters, the greater story is that as a culture and as a people, we've come through worse than what we find ourselves in now. That's the message. It's that we've come through worse. And I just talking to black and brown for a second, no, however you categorize what you're up against, right? Whether it is, we've got police brutality, whether it is systemic oppression, whether it is whatever you categorize it as, we have come through and triumphed through worse. And I named them before when we talk about our freedom fighters and Harriet Tubman and then, Nat Turner and then, Muhammad Ali. And you just go down the list of these great people that in the spite of what I would call overt oppression, where you had your black and your white only fountains and you can't sit together and all these, you can't go to church together. In the midst of that, they achieved. And so if they can achieve, you can achieve. That's the greater story, to not limit yourself by your color. Don't get stuck in, because of the way I look, I will never be able to overcome. No, you will overcome. You got, again, more in you than you think. To my white brothers and sisters, the greater story is that the line that I've used is, we got to finish the job. We got to finish the job. No, you didn't create systemic oppression. No, you didn't create racism. No, you didn't create slavery. But many of your ancestors did. Yeah. And like we are, you are living in the benefit of your history. And we are living in the challenges of our history. And so when we talk about generational wealth and all of these things that have been passed down, those are direct results of where we are today. It is directly tied to our history and where we've come from. And the job began, from slavery to civil rights, the job began of the remaking of America. Now, as my white brothers and sisters, in collaboration with our black and brown, we got to come together. But now we need our white brothers and sisters to finish the job that your ancestors started. Finish the job. And here's, let me paint the picture a little bit and I'm done. When you think about 400 years of oppression, when you think about the origin of the police system in America, which was slave catchers. That's the origin of the police. The first police were slave catchers. And then over the years you talk about in the 60s and the 70s, where you integrated the police force, you had a time where white police didn't even let black police change in the same room, right? And then it was still kind of enforcing these racist laws. When you think about all of these years of oppression, we're 70 years removed from civil rights, it is easy to believe that maybe there are just a few remnants left over. Yeah. Just 70 years removed compared to 400. There may be just a few remnants left over. And so, it's not as overt as it was, but now we're just finishing the job. We're pulling up the hood and we're just getting out the cobwebs that were left over. And so that would be the greater story, that we got to all come together and we have to all finish the job that was started.
That line, finish the job, is I love it. It's that's so tangible, so relevant. And also you're relating it to the challenge of the history for Black people and the benefit of the white. Cause we talked about privilege and I feel like everybody's kind of blown that one out and it's got baggage already, but that is just, it feels irrefutable. So man, thank you. Thank you for, candidly sharing that. Cause it was a perfect part of your story. I honestly, when we scheduled the interview, I didn't realize, that aspect of your own
Wow.
story, your own advocacy. So we'll just chalk that up to, God has a plan, right? Uh, I want to come back, Sam. I don't want to leave that at all, but I do want to come back to something that you said in the book. You say, no matter what someone believes their story is about, you believe it's all a part of God's plan. So
Yeah.
again, I'm going to pick on that where I know some people will pick on that. And because we can all take that at face value and struggle with that. I have two adopted kids.
Come
Um,
on.
and my youngest one, well, both of them went through bad stuff, but my youngest one's a little more cute to me. She's 8 now. She came to us at 4 years of life, and her initial 4 years were not good. And
Mm.
so to look at that and go, oh, part of God's plan, I don't want to accept that. I don't want
Of
to really
course.
God planned that. Now redemption I get, but I know people get hung up there. Now I've read
Yeah.
about you, I've done my research, and I know that you're not up there saying, "Oh, that was God's plan." I know that, but I want you to speak to it because I don't want anybody to hear that
Yeah.
and go, and not accept the truth of what
Yeah.
you're giving us.
The greatest tension um, for the atheist in respect to the Christian is, why is God going to deal with everything at one time and not now? That's the greatest tension. When I find myself in conversations with atheists and with Christians, it is choosing as a believer, as a Christian, and as in God, to accept that God has a greater plan than the one that we see, and to trust him in the in-between. The hope that we have is that one day there will be no more trouble, right?
Yeah.
There will be no more darkness. That's the hope that we have, that God is coming back and so on and so, and there will be no more sadness and rape and, cancer and AIDS and all of these things that we go through. That's the hope that we have, that one day it will all change. But in the meantime, the tension is choosing to trust that God is doing everything he can to redeem us and to take us towards that, and to redeem some different things along the way, and to trust that the greater plan we don't see, but that it is good. And that's the greatest tension we have. To your question, do I think God creates hardship and trouble and, AIDS and cancer and poverty? No. Cancer? No, I don't think God gives anyone cancer. Do I think he uses it? Yeah. I don't think God is the creator of trouble. I think the trouble that we find ourselves in, I don't want to get too biblical on you, right? But I think
We can get biblical.
okay, I don't want to get too biblical, but I think we were once living in a perfect world. Then the story of Adam and Eve and the sin. And once sin entered into the world, now we're all living in the result of what happens after thousands and thousands of years of sin. And it's the result of a perfect thing being corrupted by sin. And now we're living in that darkness. And that is what creates our trouble. That is what has created cancer. That is what has created AIDS. That is what's created murder and death and poverty and abandon. That's all of that is the result of sin. God didn't create it, and he's not giving it to us. It is the result of what we caused from the beginning. Now, is he using it? 100%. And I think that is what the greater story is all about. Yeah. It is the idea that if we give our life over to a greater power, and we choose to think positively, and we choose, right, to play the cards that we've been dealt in the right way or in a certain way, that God has a plan to redeem the darkness that we've found, that we've lived in. He has a plan even to redeem my family that was in poverty. He had a plan to redeem us. And if we let him do it, he will do it. And so I don't think he creates it, but I do think he leverages it.
Okay, you just said, let me pull a couple pieces out too.
Yeah.
From the book, from your message, understanding is a quote, understanding how trials in life always serve a greater purpose. And then further, God is always writing a greater story. But you just gave what I feel like is the caveat to that. And you said, if we give our life over to a greater power. Yeah. I'm one of those believers in the Bible. It has a lot of if-then statements in that. Yeah. And that God can, you said God has a plan to redeem. He can if. And I feel like we so often in the church miss the if. Listen,
the if is everything.
Yeah.
Listen,
there's a book right there.
Woo, I like that. Look, if I write it.
All right.
The if is everything. Listen, I'm a Christian today. I've given my life over to God. But if I decide to not continue to follow the ways, I can even
thank you. Yeah.
And it goes back to your original question about, well, what about people that have been in this and they've done this, and Sam and you, and the if for me was everything. Because even though I had been quote unquote rescued out of a dark situation, I still came into an interesting situation. It wasn't the best, but it was if you take advantage of the opportunity, things will change. If you decide to play your hand a different way, things will change. If you choose to rise above the current challenges, back to Nairobi, Kenya, if you decide that there is more for you, then things will change. And back to the original statement about God, if you let God come in and you surrender your life to love and to goodness, can we go Zig for and to positivity, right? And to the positive mindset that you talked about, the Ziglar. If you decide to have that positive mindset, then things will begin to change. But the if is everything.
I'm serious. Thank you. That is such a soapbox for me. And I would have to say a burden, because I feel like the church misses. We don't say that. We get up there and presuppose everybody sitting out there listening is living the if, is pursuing, is accepting, because what you said is the one that I get riled up about, because we have free will, and I have the opportunity to abandon my God. If I don't, then I don't have free will, and I don't have true love for my God. And man, so I love it, because that's what I want people to hear, because when they hear that, then there's a greater story that they can accept. Woo! I know I love it. So I want to go there. And this just kind of hit me as I was reading your book too, from a tangible aspect. And I don't know if it's totally fair to throw at you, but just a greater story. I don't know which way to come at it. How do I know, as you're talking to a group of people, what are some telltale signs? Maybe this is really elementary, but I'm gonna ask anyways, that you are not living your greater story, almost kind of a greater story versus a greater story. And maybe it comes back to where we started on, and it's how you paint the picture of what's happened to you. Is it fair to, are you a victim or not? Maybe that's a greater story filter,
kind of mantra. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's phenomenal. Kevin, we got to write a book together. Kevin, that's what we got.
All right. I'm game.
Right. Come on. I would say the greatest, and this is going to be deep. This is going to be kind of deep.
Please.
The greatest test of whether or not you're living in the greater story that God has for you is whether or not you are living in peace. That, when I started this journey of figuring out what is God's best for me, I went through a lot of different things, right? First of all, I had to ask the question, does God have these, is everybody supposed to be a millionaire, right? I mean, you start to go through this stuff, and You go, and when I put this, I feel like you find truth, obviously scriptures, but when you hold it up and then you put it through all of the filters that you could put it through around the globe. And I think about people with, that are living in poverty. I think about people that don't have as much as Americans. I think about people that are rich. I think about people that are poor. I think about people, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. And what it came down to is that the ultimate goal is not possessions. The ultimate thing is, are you at peace with your life? And here's the thing about peace. The thing about peace that is deep and that is such a great litmus test is that if we believe in God, then we believe that God is within us. God is not going to let us have peace if we aren't doing the things he wants us to do. And that goes as far as, I got all the money in the world. I got all of this. I got this. I got, boom. I got my wife. I got my car. but I'm not at peace. I mean, we know millionaires, right? That have everything, but it's like, and it's because I'm not giving back enough. I'm not leveraging my life for something greater. This even goes over to the Christian and to the person, the follower of God or whatever. It goes back to that of, okay, yeah, I'm going to church. I'm doing this. I'm giving my money, but I'm not at peace. I'm missing something. Oh, you're not fulfilling your purpose. You're not living in what God has designed for you to live in. If you're not in purpose, you won't have peace. The greater story, even in your marriage, it's like we're doing well, but there's something, peace. God will always disturb our peace when we are not going where we need to go. And that's a principle that goes all the way back into every area. You're living a certain lifestyle. You're a victim, right? It's like, I'm a victim. I'm just this, and nothing ever will go well for me. And you're not at peace. You're not at peace. The question is, how do you get to peace? You have to now dive into that mentality and go, what is keeping me away? And then, there's that moment with the counselor where they go, well, how long are you going to be a victim?
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, and I found that the North Star that I believe God uses is peace. He disturbs our peace until one, and I think that's a consistent journey. Right? Like, I think he's always disturbing our peace. I think for me, once I've done one thing, he'll disturb my peace. Now it's time for this. Okay, now there's more. It's time for this. It's like, I can't get rid of this thing. So let's drill down on it. I know it was a big idea, but
go. Yeah.
No, I was asking you. Whatever you think.
I wanted to go right. I'm sitting here typing notes. I wanted to go right there because disrupting our peace. That is one that has almost been as directive to my life as the vision. We talk about the vision, the desire.
Yeah.
And I had a good friend of mine, Gary Barkalow, wrote the book, It's Your Call. And he mentored me in trusting the desires of my heart, as if I am pursuing my God, if I am pressing in to trust the desires of my heart. So we got there. But then what I learned is also trusting. And the word I used was distastes. Why did I feel called? Well, God, why did I feel called to this direction? And you fulfilled it. And I believe that you were faithful in that. And yet now I don't got it anymore. I feel called away. I feel maybe it was just a season, and I learned to trust the distaste, and that, God has seasons, and now I'm thinking about it again with you talking about he's disrupting my peace. He called me there. It was true. I have peace in it. And now he's disrupting that. And I've learned to pay attention to that maybe as much as anything, because it's so easy to feel like, man, if God called me to that, if it was right and for true, it's supposed to be forever, right? It's got to last forever. Well, then what? We just arrive and coast. And I can't find that in my Bible anywhere either. Disrupting our peace. I love the answer. Of knowing my greater story, though, is the litmus test is, am I at peace? Which not many people are. Now, you brought into that purpose, which is such a big part of your message. And I'm going to pull this is out of your book. Your purpose is wherever your passion, giftings, and God's provision intersect. That I'd like you
Yeah.
to dig into, because purpose, of course, it's the Ziglar show. We talk about that. So many of our guests talk about that, but no different than, rewriting our story. I don't think we can hear it enough. I don't think we can pursue understanding of it enough, because it's so monumental and it's so complex. So purpose, we talk about purpose, and what is that? Because people right now in this personal development, purpose is, pursue your passion, something you love, and you got purpose. It's
Yeah.
part of it,
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
So, but I want you to take it, because you brought purpose
Yeah.
into peace. That's what I heard.
100%. Well, and the question you asked me, I've never been asked that question around what's our litmus test. And so I went ahead and went there.
I
But a
like it.
greater story is essentially a millennial, modern day, I don't even want to say modern day, but more of my generation's version of the purpose-driven life.
Yeah.
The purpose-driven life is Rick Warren. It's the second highest selling book under the Bible. It's just like, because it's life's greatest question, right? Like life's greatest question. The greatest tension for the Christian, right, is, why is God going to do everything at one time, and trusting? But life's greatest question is, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Do I matter? What does that mean? How do I access it? And I'll be honest with you, Kevin, I arrived at this formula for purpose because God disturbed my peace, and I couldn't find peace in life, period. I was going to church. I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to do. I had dreams, and nothing in my life was clicking. I felt like I kept running into a brick wall. You ever felt that way? It's like you just keep running into a brick wall. It's like nothing can work. And it led me to purpose. God, why am I here? And I'll be honest, I felt like for a season, I knew why. I felt like I had vision, but I didn't know how. And how is almost worse than why. Because to know why and to not know how is just, it's like, okay, I know what I'm supposed to do, but how do I know I'm supposed to, but how am I supposed to? It's like, I know what my marriage is supposed to be, but how do I get it there? I know what God wants me, like, or why, but how do I actually do it? And I got caught in the how, and in the journey to how, I discovered the formula for purpose. And it was a messy journey. It was a very emotional journey. And here's what I found. I don't know if you've heard of TD Jakes before. Yeah. I think he's a mainstream voice. He's also a Christian voice, but he's kind of a mainstream voice too. I went to a conference during this unrest, right? This unrest in my soul, where the peace was gone. And TD Jakes said something I'll never forget. He said, most of us spend 80% of our time. I'm gonna start over because I want to say it right. Most of us spend 80% of our time doing what we think we're good at, and 20% of our time doing what we're actually good at. And people deal with the 80 in us just to get the 20. It was huge. He said, and your trick is gonna be figuring out what your 20 is and flipping the percentage. In other words, he said, most of us spend most of our lives doing what we want to do, what we think we're supposed to do, and 20% of our time actually doing what we actually are supposed to do and actually what we're good at. And so I went on a journey. I said, well, how do I figure out the 20? Right? When we talk about the how, right? It's like, I know what, and the how actually revolutionized the why and the what. I mean, I know I'm getting pretty deep. And so as I went on this journey, he said, the only way for you to figure out, what the 20 is, you got to ask other people. And I was like, what? He said, because we can lie to ourselves. When this took me down to scripture, Kevin, and I won't preach or even go super, but what I discovered through scripture and through my journey is that everything we've been given and our purpose in life, it is directly connected to making the world better. That's what our purpose is, right? And the scriptures reveal God has given us gifts for the building of the kingdom of the world, and really for the world, the betterment of humanity. That's why we exist, to make the world better, to make people better. In fact, I don't even, again, well, I won't go down that road. With that being said, the question that I started asking myself and people is, what am I doing that actually makes the world better? And if you can answer that question, not what can I do that makes the world better, it's what do I actually do that makes the world better? What, in other words, the question that Bishop Jakes asks us to ask people is, what's special about me? What's special about me? And in that question, and then you have to sometimes drill down to what gift or talent is special that I have. The answer to that question lets you know what people are actually benefiting from on the other side of you that you're doing. And it helps you figure out what you're actually good at and what you're not good at. And for me, I thought I was the Christian version of Usher. That's who I wanted to be. I don't know if you know Usher Raymond at all.
Yeah.
He's an artist. Okay. I thought I was going to be an R&B star. And that's what I did my whole life. And until one day, and here's the deal. I was actually talented at it, but was it my purpose? Right? Was I, if we were to use the word good, define good as purpose and thing that you've been purposed to do, you know, I kind of changed it to grace to do, right? That special thing that God has, you know, created you to do. I was good at it, but I was talented at it, but was I created to do it? And friends of mine started telling me, hey, we love when you sing, but it's something about in between the songs when you talk that really is. And I started hearing consistently, it's something about this inspiration when you communicate it. That's what makes you special. And can I tell you, I went through a life crisis because I woke up one day, and the question I always ask, what if you wake up one day and you realize you're something you never thought you were?
Yeah.
I mean, what if, you know, so anyway.
Hey, we got so many people. I've got a guest coming up soon who spent most of his life becoming a lawyer, working in that field, and then deciding he hated it, you know, and to take that investment and to go a different direction. And so many of us are there because, as you talked about, we are brought up in a culture that tries to find something you're good at and say, pursue that. One of the things I was best at naturally was ball sports. You name the ball sport, football, baseball, whatever. And I excelled at it. And so I was kind of steer that direction. I didn't really even enjoy it. And I ultimately did leave it. And it was so hard though, because the pressure internally and externally is, man, if you're good at it, that's what you pursue. But you know, you use the word passion, and I was not, you know, passionate about that. So you talk about your purpose, again, is wherever your passions, giftings, and God's provision intersect. So, you know, to look at what you're passionate about. And I think people often hear content down that road. Okay, so come on giftings. And I hope people, you know, especially our audience who are bent this direction, have done some work on giftings, which is more than your personality profile, much more, but passion and giftings. But now you also say, and God's provision intersect. I wanted you to unpack that one, because that's not one that I'm used to seeing connected to a definition of purpose.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One, I think what we were just talking about was the idea of identifying a gift, because I think a gift for me is different than a talent. A gift is something that's special, that's actually making people better. And I always define it this way: a gift is something that, you know, people are always, they're knocking on your door for you to do, right? It's making the world better and making people better. We watch American Idol, that there are some people that think they're gifted at singing that they aren't, right? I mean, it's like, that's not making the world.
So, yeah.
Right. It's not making the world better. So I think after you identify the gift, right, I gotta identify the passion. What breaks your heart? I always say that. What breaks your heart? That's how you find passion. The thing that right, I mean, if you had 1 week to live, you would do that. The thing that you would run, the problem you would solve, what breaks your heart. God's provision. Passion, gifting, provision colliding. It could be, you know, here's the deal. You could be great at something. You could be passionate about it. but it could be something that God doesn't want you to do. And you know when God doesn't want you to do something because there's no energy behind it. In other words, man, you keep and see, look, that's different from perseverance, because I think with businesses and all of that, like you got to launch something and it's going to take a while to get it, and you got to pursue. But if you've been pursuing this thing for 20 years and it hadn't worked, it might not just be that you're not good at it. It might be God didn't want you to do it.
Well, and that's part of your story that I just been reading. You talked about the R&B pursuit, that you were doing that. You were good. You got the accolades that you were good. You got testimonies. You were good. You got opportunities, and then it didn't happen. And then you go on and it didn't happen. And man, I have been in those where it feels like everything's lined up here. I can't find a problem with it outside of my pursuit of God, and say, man, if I'm knocking on these doors and I'm knocking and I'm knocking and you're not opening any of them, that's difficult. But I hear you. Man, I love, you're the first person to talk about passion, what breaks your heart, because I have so often said, man, I don't know if I'm passionate about that. I feel burdened by that.
Yeah.
That resonates with me more than passion. But with you, you just brought it together. Passion, what breaks your heart. And I want people to also hear what you said about, because we passed it a minute ago, and I want to come back to it real quick, to purpose. And you said, where are you making the world better? Because I have absolutely found that in my time getting to sit and talk with rock stars like yourself who are making a difference in the world, and where they find passion is mattering to another person. And bottom line, we want to matter to another person. You said making the world better. I don't know how to make it better other than doing something that matters to another person. But I want people to hear that, because I feel like they're searching for the purpose. And that is where my test, again, like you, I'm not going to get clinical. I'm not a psychologist. I don't got anything on the end of my name at all. That is my experience. So that is where we find purpose, is mattering to other people. And you said making the world a better place. And I love that. What am I doing now that actually makes the world better? That's the testimony of where your giftings are. Wow. That's good stuff. I think you got another couple books in you just out of this show that I want to read.
I'm hoping. Look, I'm going to move because there's this sound outside and the lawnmower is going. And so I'm going to move so I can still talk to you, get you good audio, and talk to the people.
Okay.
I'm feeling good. Can you hear me?
Good. Yep, I can. And looking on this, I want to stay on purpose here, because as you said, one of the primary, if not the primary pursuit we all have, what is my purpose? So passion, that thing that breaks your heart. I use the word burden sometimes. Your giftings, and I appreciate you pulling that out, that your giftings are different than your talents. Because going back to what we talked about, if you're in school, you're going to be whatever you have. You have to be talented in math. You should go become an accountant. You be talented in math and not like it at all.
Yeah.
So your talents, your skills, different than the giftings, that thing that you just have a natural propensity for. I've got 9 kids, and I see amongst those just inherent things that they are. Yeah, I would say it's more than talent. Man, it's a gift. I don't understand how they do that. And it may be something that I don't, let's say, if it's math and numbers and figuring things out in that way, man, I don't even want that. But you've got that. That's amazing. And it seems like a gift. I don't think we have any personality profiles or gifts and or talents and skills things out there that's really honed in on a gift.
I think a gift, it has something to do, and has something to do with divine power. A gift, I always say, has grace attached to it. A gift always has grace attached to it.
Explain that.
Grace to me is a supernatural thing that only God can put on something. And the difference between a talent and a gift, because you could be a talent, you're good at it. Okay, yeah, I'm good at this, great. But it's not, there's nothing special coming off of it. You could be really great at it, but there's not supernatural ability and purpose tied to it. In other words, the doors don't fly open when you do it, or there's not eternal implications when you start to map it out. That's what I would say is the biggest gift, the biggest difference between the gift and the talent is that it has divine capacity attached to
Oh,
it.
okay. Well, you talk about getting deep. I mean, in the church, which I grew up in, and we have a primarily faith-based audience listening here. There's still I'm going to say a subconscious perspective that I believe a majority of people have in not, I don't know that they would say that I don't believe I've got a
Yeah.
gift, but I don't believe they consciously accept that they do.
Yeah.
And and to come in, and of course we've all heard, the God's, got something special in everybody. We hear that at platitude. I don't think that again, I'm gonna say we, even in the church, really grasp onto that. And maybe if we do, it's frustrating because we don't know what it is. Especially if my circumstances are bad, my life has been going back to the story. I had this crap, upbringing in a hard environment, hard circumstances. Today, things are hard and I'm supposed to believe that I have a gift. Well, then I must just stink because I don't know what it is. Why don't
Yeah.
I know what it is? Why hasn't it ever surfaced? Why hasn't somebody come along and knocked on my door and put me on American Idol to sing? Because it hasn't happened for me.
Yeah. I think, I think people miss out on what their gifts are because they sometimes don't define it as it should be. And, gifts come in many different phases. They come in many different sizes. They come in many different shapes, and they come in many different categories. And, when we think about what a gift is, I go back to that exercise of calling 3 people or 4 people, friends that know you close. And we talk about this in the book, that would not lie to you, and asking them, what is special about me? What gift or talent do I have that's special about me? And what you'll hear is all types of things. Many people underestimate what their gifts actually are, and they discount them as not gifts when they really are. For instance, administration is a gift. It's a gift. And ask me how I know, because I'm not administrative.
Because you don't have it.
Right. I mean, there are some people that are so good at administrative assignments and responsibilities that you have to pay them top dollar, because you literally could not organize it the way that they could. There are so many administrative gifts. Kindness is a gift. Hospitality is a gift, right? The ability to have vision, the ability to operate well in a creative meeting, like all of these things. Creativity is a gift. All of these things are gifts. And if you're not careful, you'll discount something that is a gift because it becomes easy to you.
Thank you. I had that written down right here. Thank you. Because we miss it because it comes easily to us. I have banged my head when I see people and I think, oh my, you were brilliant. I cannot. And they're like, really? It's nothing.
Right. And that's what goes back to TD Jakes. We spend 80% of our time doing what we think we're good at, and 20%. And the thing is to recognize what the 20% is and to flip the percentage.
Yeah.
That thing that you underestimate, I want to challenge you right now to make it your life. Because many things are attached to it. One, for many of us, your financial security is attached to it. Yeah. Your peace is attached to it. Your happiness, whatever you're gifted at, right, is the thing that God has given you to achieve purpose in life. This is so important that you surrender. And that's why I talk about surrendering as opposed to discovering, how purpose is more surrendered to than it is found, because you are already who you are. The trick is surrendering to that gift that you underestimate, or that by some divine whatever you have been pushed down, a divine attack, right? Darkness has attacked you in that area, and you feel like you don't want to do that because your mama did that, or your dad did this, or you got hurt by this, and you don't want to. Whatever that thing is, you got to get rid of the cobwebs and you got to dust it off Stop underestimating, surrender, and build a life around it. And you will find significance.
You got time? I'm going to keep going.
I got 10 minutes.
Passion, what breaks your heart? I'm stuck on that again.
Yeah.
And what breaks your heart? I want your commentary on this, because I have realized with myself and with other people that sometimes they look at that thing that really does break their heart. They really are passionate and they question the validity of it.
Ooh.
Because I've had times on my own of having to explain my own, an area of passion, and to say, I can't, I have no justification. It just is.
Yeah.
I don't know. And honestly, it came to a place years ago when here I am serving, in essence, middle and upper class of personal development. And that's who I'm serving. And my brother lived for a decade over in Rwanda, and he's serving the neediest of the needy over there. And a little question came up of, is my service on level with his? And at that point, that's when it kind of dawned on me. I don't know. I don't know why God has called me to these, much more affluent, probably at that time, primarily white people. I don't know, but it's just where my heart is broken for this odd reason. So maybe speaking to that, to our maybe cautioning us to not invalidate it, especially by comparison to whatever somebody else is doing.
Wow. Such a huge, you're good at this. You're good at this.
Thank you.
I think one of the greatest thoughts in God and in Christianity is that his ways are not our ways and his thoughts are not our thoughts. It goes back to the idea that we don't know what we don't know because we're not the creator of the world. So that from the seat that he sits in, he sees something different from what we all see. And I would say the same thing about when we talk about this idea of discounting your passions and your desires and all of that. It's like, why am I called over here? Many people will try to judge what they don't understand. Not having a panoramic view of everything is a very limited perspective, and it limits your ability to fully understand why God has given somebody something. Here's the deal. At the end of the day, all of life is connected in some way. What's great about the idea of a world economy is that the African economy relates to the U.S. economy, and the U.S. economy relates to South America and Australia and Asia. And they're all connected, and they play a part, and we help each other, and we trade, and we do these different things. And it's the same thing of what we're saying. It's like God is a big God, and it's a big world. And you need people helping people everywhere in every sphere of influence. And God will deposit a different thing into every person depending on where he wants them to go and what he wants them to do. Because here's where people mess up. If you discredit someone else's passion, you will miss sometimes the impact that God has them making that will help you do what you're doing better. For instance, we need people that are on the ground in Nairobi and in Rwanda and in these poor places. And we also need people in the boardroom raising money to give to them so that they can keep doing the work.
Yeah.
They can't raise the money, nor do they have, not all of them. And I'm speaking not in generalizations, but there are many people that don't have the skill of raising money, but they do have the skill of figuring out how to create a systemic change in a region. And then there are people that know that they are gifted in doing meetings and lunches, and that they can get billions of dollars from laughter. It's their gift. Mm-hmm. But they couldn't go and they couldn't walk in Morocco and tell you, oh, do this or do that. It's not their skill set. Here's what's great about God. We need both to change the world.
Well, I could do this all day.
We got to write a book together. We got to do something. I'm like, what is happening? I love this guy.
This is what I care about. We're here to help ourselves and others change. And I love root cause issues, and this is it. Man, I'm gonna get as many people to buy this book and to dig in with what you are doing as possible. And I'm grateful we're doing this. I know we got thousands of people watching right now
Wow.
or who on Facebook, and ultimately it'll have 30,000 views. The show will have tens of thousands of people. The keys that we've hit on, we just may need to do another show together at the least.
I'm in.
Because some of these topics, I feel like we cover they're core things, but we can't give enough info on them. Man, Sam, thank you for taking your time with us. I am grateful for God's gifts in you that we've gotten to experience
Thank you.
and be exposed to today. Thank you for being here. Thanks for doing what you do and making the effort that you do to share what God is doing through you, Sam. Thank you.
Kevin, listen, you're the man. Thank you for telling everybody about the book. Listen, pre-orders really help us so much. I know people don't think they do, but they do. And I would say this, man, the legacy of Zig will live on forever, man. And in you, it's coming. I mean, it's living at such a higher level. And I'm just so honored to be on this platform and to be talking to you, man. I am a friend of the family whenever you need me. It's an honor.
I will call on that, Sam. Thank you so much.
Thank you.